Psychologists will tell you that we as a people, as much as we love our autonomy and we love to show our independence and our unique personalities, and we like to wear those things as a badge, it really is all a front. Scientifically speaking, we are actually more built for consistency. We love the unexpected. And there's a lot of different things that show that in our lives. Think about it. We all have our favorite restaurants, and at our favorite restaurant, we have our favorite meal. And you might think one evening, tonight I'm gonna order something different. I'm gonna live on the edge. But what always happens? You go back to your old standby, right? Or maybe you think it's time for a wardrobe refresh. You're going to buy something and wear something that no one would expect. But the entire time you know you have your favorite sweatshirt that you've had for 25 years in the back of your closet, just in case things go sideways. And the same is true about the things you watch. These same psychologists actually say people watch the same television shows and the same movies over and over again because to them it presents a sense of order in the world. And at a primal level, we need that security and that peace of mind. And I think this explains a lot when it comes to the phenomenon that is Hallmark Christmas movies. You know what I mean. You either love them or you love to hate them, but either way, you know exactly what I mean. One person took to Twitter and said, what has 12 actors, 4 settings, 2 writers, and 1 plotline? 637 Hallmark Christmas movies. And it's so true. Big city girl boss goes back to her small hometown at Christmas. She walks around the corner with a full cup of coffee and, bumps into a cute country boy. He's wearing a green sweater, she dons a red scarf, and the sparks just fly. At some point in this film, there will be a cute little bakery, a cozy inn, a Christmas tree farm, a kiss in the snow, and oh yeah, a dog. You know this is how they go. Every single one of them. And yet people will watch all of these until they literally can't keep their eyes open anymore. Scientifically speaking, we don't really love surprises as much as we think we do. We really love that comfort of consistency. And it's not just in what we watch, it's also in what we read. We all have those favorite stories, those tales that we love to hear or tell over and over again that bring us that comfort. Our favorite stories are almost like wrapping up in a warm blanket on a cold day. And maybe for you, the book of Ruth is just such a story. You've heard it many times before. You can tell it right now if you were asked. It's a short story, only 4 chapters, so it's easy to tell the whole thing in one sitting. It's a classic tale that follows a clear story arc, an introduction of the characters, an introduction of a problem, working through the conflict, landing on a resolution. It's a story that has a great moral or a lesson to learn from it. And let's not forget, it's all about the city girl who's new in town and meets the country boy, and they fall in love on his farm. It's Ruth. There's nothing out of the ordinary here, right? It's classic, it's comfortable, it's expected. Well, if that is your current understanding of the book of Ruth, I'm afraid I'm about to rip off your warm blanket. I think as you dive into this study with me, you're going to end up finding what I have learned, that when it comes to Ruth, the only thing you can expect is the unexpected. But this time, you might find the unexpected really engaging and even exciting. So let's do this. Let's talk about some introductory issues, some expectations that we have about the book of Ruth before we even jump into the text. Here's one for you. Ruth is a historical book, right? This means that it's one of the books in the set of books of history in our Old Testament. Now, we know this is true because that's what's on the colorful posters in our Sunday school classroom, right? But have you ever asked yourself, why is Ruth considered a book of history? And why is Ruth positioned where she is in the order of the Old Testament? Is this just because these are the order that the books were written in chronologically? Well, no, actually. So Ruth is placed right in between the book of Judges and the books of 1st and 2nd Samuel. Now, Ruth was written after these two books. Here's how we know this. When you look at the words and the grammatical structure in the book of Ruth, there's samples there of both Hebrew from pre-exile and Hebrew from post-exile. So what this means is the author of Ruth had all of these books to study and read as they were writing the story of Ruth. And so Ruth really comes in as a bridge between these two, connecting the eras of the judges to the era of the kings. Now here's another good argument to back this up. The placement of the story of Ruth, it begins with the judges and it ends with 1st and 2nd Samuel. Notice this, Ruth 1:1, in the days when the judges ruled. That's where we start. And Ruth 4, well, spoiler alert, it ends with a genealogy. But here's what's interesting about this. There is nowhere else in the Bible where a book ends with a genealogy. They always begin with genealogies because they're starting someone's story. But what if Ruth isn't just a really odd exception to that rule? What if this genealogy is also starting someone's story? The story of King David, which comes next. So this is a reason that she's a historical book. This is explaining why she is where she is. This is really explaining what was already expected, right? But here's the unexpected. While our Old Testaments are divided into sections like law and poetry and history and major prophets and minor prophets, the Hebrew Bible was actually only broken up into 3 sections. They had the Torah, which was the first 5 books of the Old Testament. These are their books of law, their books of instruction. Then they have what's called the Nevi'im, which are all of the books of prophecy. And then finally, they have what's called the Ketuvim. And this is the writings. This is where we find poetry. This is where we find wisdom literature. And this is actually where we find the book of Ruth. In the Hebrew scriptures, the book of Ruth is positioned right after the book of Proverbs. Now, I'm going to explain more why she's right after the book of Proverbs in a later session. But for now, I just want to show you that while, yes, Ruth absolutely serves a historical purpose, bridging the eras between the judges and the kings, it does so in quite a poetic fashion. So the structure of the book of Ruth is actually what's called a chiasm. Now, if you're not familiar with chiasm, this is just a pattern of writing that almost has like a boomerang effect, or it kind of looks like a V shape. So in this case, we have a structure that looks like this: A, B, C, C, B, A. When we come to our first A, this is the very beginning of the book of Ruth. And what we see here is a family history. At the beginning, though, this family history is pretty informal. It's a list of names. These are characters that you're going to see in the story, some of them side characters, some of them main characters, but they're setting up what's about to happen. When we come to our first B, we see what we're going to call kinship. Again, this is pretty informal. It's just showing the relationship between our main characters, and this particular kinship happens to be between women. Now, as we move into both of our C sections, this is where the crux of the story really begins to take shape. Now, our first C, we see Ruth and Boaz, and they are in the field, the barley field, okay? I really like how historian Todd Linnefelt breaks these C sections down. He gives them each 5 movements. And in this first one right here with Ruth and Boaz in the field, what we see is an exchange between Ruth and Naomi, Ruth's arrival in the field, Boaz trying to identify who Ruth is, Boaz deeming Ruth as worthy, and then Ruth checking back in with Naomi. Now watch this. We move into the second C, which again is Ruth and Boaz, but this time they're at the threshing floor. There's also 5 movements here. An exchange between Ruth and Naomi. Ruth shows up at the threshing floor. Boaz tries to identify her. Boaz deems her as worthy, and Ruth checks back in with Naomi. That's kind of a clear parallel there, right? Now, as we move back out to our second B, once again, we see kinship. But this time, the kinship is a lot more formal. These people are related, but they don't know each other as well as the women did. And interestingly enough, this kinship is between men. And finally, as we move back out to our last A, once again, we have a family history. And once again, it's much more formal in the genealogy. Here's the difference between the two A's. In the beginning, we see a family history that is just full of destruction and decline. But in the end, we see a family history that is strengthened for generations to come. So, I think the most incredible part of this poetic structure is that while the parallels are clear and really well balanced, there is nothing static or boring or predictable about this story, even with such a clear structure. So, there's our writing structure. Safe to say, more than meets the eye, right? What about the purpose or the themes of the book of Ruth? This may be a familiar book, very well-known story, and maybe it would seem uncomplicated and easy to understand. Here are some of the expected thoughts on theme and purpose when we come to the book of Ruth. We see this as a story of love and commitment. We see this as a story about obedience and faithfulness. I've actually heard it said that Ruth is a highly emotional story. It's written about women, for women. And I've even found some commentators who have used words like idyllic and charming and even delightful to describe the book of Ruth. And you know what? Much of that is true. We're going to see so many examples of love and devotion shared between Naomi and Ruth and Boaz, and even Boaz and Naomi. None of that is wrong. However, I want you to know that there are a lot of historians that are still digging into the book of Ruth. They are still finding new things in the grammar and in the language. They're still gleaning understanding. And these historians will tell you that this story is so much more than just a light breath of fresh air after all of the destruction and despair that we see in Israel in the book of Judges. No, the book of Ruth is gritty. It's raw and real. It digs in deep to some pretty painful issues. And every time you think you understand what it's talking about, you're almost guaranteed that there's multiple layers to figure out. Some of the unexpected lessons that we are going to grapple with as we dive into this study are things like the realities of widowhood and the shame of barrenness. We have to deal with patriarchy and tiers of the workforce. We're going to talk about the laws of the faith community, and we'll even get a glimpse of the justice system. All of that jam-packed in this tiny little narrative. And not only that, but we get to see God. And we're going to wrestle with some really difficult theology. So yeah, if you came here expecting a simple, lovely, romantic interlude, think again. This book is complex. And it's definitely not just for women. That said, though, there's another element of this writing that might not even occur to us in our modern Western mindset, but I guarantee you the original audience would have noticed, and they would have been shocked by this. This is, in fact, a story all about women. I mean, the story opens like a lot of other biblical stories, or really any story set in a patriarchal society. There was a man named Elimelech, and he had 2 sons. Does that sound familiar? Yeah, it would have to them as well. That's how stories are supposed to start, all about the men. The surprising turn of events here, though, is that by verse 5, they're all dead. And so now we have these husbandless, sonless women who are carrying on this story. A story of God's faithfulness being told by an all-female cast in a time and a place where females had no status. That's what you might call unexpected. So we've talked about the intricacies of the structure. We've talked about the array of issues that we're going to have to deal with in this story. We've talked about the cultural craziness of highlighting a story all about women in this time and place. And so this brings me to my final question. Who is this story about, anyway? Now, I know the obvious answer, right? It's Ruth, it's in the name, right? But I would ask you to take another look. If you pay attention, this story is really told through the perspective of Naomi. I mean, maybe before you thought the details of Naomi's life were just there to provide some background or to get us to the real story, the story between Ruth and Boaz. But look at this. It's Naomi's husband. It's Naomi's sons. These are Naomi's daughters-in-law, and it's Naomi's quest to go home. It's Naomi who's having a faith crisis, and Naomi who has a name change. It's Naomi's land, and it's Naomi's kinsman redeemer, and in the end, it's Naomi's family line that continues on in the pages of history. Now, don't get me wrong, Ruth is absolutely paramount to this story, and she's just as unexpected. Some have labeled Ruth as meek, or mild, or timid, or they've even called her directionless. But honestly, they couldn't be more wrong. The Ruth makes big, life-altering decisions and gutsy moves in this story. I can't wait to dig in deeper so that you can maybe see her in a new light and join me in giving her the respect and the honor that she deserves. But for now, I just want you to see enough to see this. If you are in a season of rejoicing over God's presence and his providence in your life, then this is a story for you. But if you're in a season where you feel like God has abandoned you and you are questioning his faithfulness, well, this is a story also for you. This is not a fairy tale. This is an epic. And I'm glad you're here for it. Because there's one thing that we know for sure moving forward. When it comes to Ruth, the only thing you can expect is the unexpected. I'll see you next session when we dive into Ruth chapter 1, verse 1.
One of the interesting things, I'll ask you some questions here. I was trying to find this note that I had. But the interesting thing about this story is how God uses different people. And one of the interesting things about Boaz, do you know who his mother was? I think it might be on this one sheet, but do you know who his mother was? Rahab.
Oh.
Rahab the harlot. That's who Boaz's mother was. So it shows you that God can use everybody. And when God gets a hold of people, things move and things change. And so it's just a great part of that. When you look at the genealogy that's involved here, maybe it was on another sheet. I was trying to figure. I thought it was on this sheet here, but anyway. But Rahab was Boaz's mother. And the thing about this, when you trace back Ruth's background goes to David, King David. That's the importance of this. The genealogy follows back through the process to King David. So that's where another part of the line. And then when you trace it all back again, you're looking at the importance of Bethlehem and all the people that were the players, especially Jesus Christ. And so that's part of that too. One of the questions they asked is to share some of your creature comforts, things that you just keep coming back to time and time again, meals, movies, books, etc. What are some of your creature comforts?
Spaghetti's mine.
The what?
Spaghetti.
Spaghetti? I can't have that.
Because when we go to a restaurant, it seems like no matter what, I always
You always get spaghetti?
I always get the spaghetti.
And even though you want to go try something new,
Right.
you say, I'm going to
Or
go
I'll
to this
look
restaurant, I'm going to try something new. You always come back. The thing
Right.
you ought to know. Now, why is that?
She likes spaghetti.
It's who said safe? Safe? Yeah. We get caught up with safe, huh?
Jerry and said because she likes spaghetti.
Okay. So coming into this study, what did you already know or think you knew about the story of Ruth? In what ways has it been comforting? As we come into this study, what did you already know about Ruth? Did you have any comments you thought about Ruth?
Has a happy ending.
Has a happy
Happy
ending?
ending, yeah.
It does have a happy ending. And you know,
To her mother-in-law. She was very loyal to her mother-in-law.
Yeah.
yes, she was.
Amen.
I'll pass on that one. So, okay, so. where
How
am
was
I?
Orpha related to Goliath?
You what?
How was Orpha related to Goliath? I tried looking it up and I couldn't find it. Aren't they related?
I don't know. I can't.
Orpah related to who?
Goliath.
Goliath.
No.
I don't think.
Orpah is Moabite. He's from Philistia.
He was a,
He's a Philistine.
yeah.
Where'd you see that? Did you see that somewhere?
I was trying to look it up to find that. I thought they were related somehow, but it didn't. I couldn't find.
Here's a fun fact that I think of whenever I think about Ruth. Oprah Winfrey was named for Orpah, but her mother misspelled it on the birth certificate.
Really?
It's supposed to be
Well, there you go. There's some,
Yeah.
that's pretty interesting facts right there.
Became one of the richest women in the world. Oh, no doubt. Yeah. Billionaire.
Okay, so looking back over your study notes, discuss some of the unexpected elements. What impacts does this new information have on you as you move forward into the study of Ruth?
Well, it's good to know you always find something new a lot of times that you didn't know.
Well, I think for me, the thing too is the fact God is such an awesome God that He includes these stories in here, and every story has a reason it's here. And when you think about, I never thought about the fact, well, I mean, she said that it was probably written after Samuel, yeah, but it's interesting where God placed this between Judges and 1st and 2nd Samuel, because then 1st and 2nd Samuel is where we're going to get introduced into David. And David is from this line. So it's all part of this line, but it's all part of how God sets His system up.
Yeah.
And so that's a good part too. Take time right now, individually or as a group, to read through the entire book of Ruth, which will, I mean, I encourage you to read it sometime this week, just to familiarize yourself. I've been really digging into some stuff on just all the people that are involved in the story. And again, I just get blown away how God uses different people in different areas in different times. And the results are always just great things happen. When he gets a hold of people, great things happen. And so it's a great story. I think I'm going to end there. I forgot to bring my cards for prayer time or for sharing with prayer. And I just forgot.
Like index cards? Like an index?
I didn't bring my little index cards. You got them?
I might be able to get some, yeah.
I mean, if nothing else, we could tear off a piece of paper on your thing and put your name on it. If you want to get those cards, we can get those cards. But I think it's important. I've been praying for termite now for about 2 or 3 months, and I'm waiting to hear all the positive things that are happening.
Mother-in-law hasn't moved in with me yet.
See what he's got there. Now, I brought my mother-in-law tonight without my wife. I brought my mother-in-law, and just like, even though he mouths off about his mother-in-law all the time, who does he go sit by at lunchtime today?
Yeah.
His mother. He makes a beeline right for his mother-in-law and to sit by her. Is this still on?
Yeah.
Oh.
I saw it first. Yeah, Kathleen will see that.
But I think the stay on Ruth's gonna. She is so good. I just love to listen to her talk, and she presents so well. And my problem is I get so much stuff. It's hard for me to organize all my thoughts. And sometimes you don't want to get in my head anyway. But I did a bunch of reading today again just to familiar myself with the study. But again, I was really happy when I found her to present this, and because at the end, Ruth has got a great story, just like when we've seen what Esther did. And so anyway, that's any other thoughts you might have on Ruth? And here's our cards. Okay.
Hopefully this is enough. If not, I'll make it one.
All right, so write your name down, and then we'll.
Let's see where it says that Goliath was the son of Orpha.
What's the reference?
The Babylonian Talmud.
Oh, well,
But is it Ruth's? Are you saying that's Ruth's sister? Or
Yeah.
not?
yeah, but just
Well,
from the
it's
Talmud.
it's not her sister.
It's not a sister.
Yeah.
It's from the Babylonian Talmud. So we don't know if that's true or not.
So that, yeah.
I just thought that I'd heard
Yeah,
something
yeah.
about Goliath being related to one of them, but I'm picking it up. But
I know you were for this week. Oh, I couldn't see that.
So we don't write like, what page for, we just gotta ask.